Welcome back to the program. We just spoke to the city's controversial Transportation Commissioner, Janette Sadik-Khan, whose policies have turned into lightning rods for the city's tabloid editorial boards. But is she getting an unfair rap? Joining us to grade the commissioner over the past 12 months and discuss the other top political issues of the week are Consultants Corner. We have Republicans Jake Menges and Susan Del Percio, and Democrats Marissa Shorenstein and Scott Levenson. Welcome to all of you. Let's go right to the grades. We'll start with you, Marissa, the DOT commissioner. Your grade for her?
I gave her a B. I must admit it's not based on a lot of serious looking at everything she's done, but I gave her a B for this reason. I think that this administration is trying things out, and for that I give them a B for at least being creative, trying things. Some don't always work, many don't work, but I like the fact that they try new things all the time, and for that I give them a B.
Okay, fair enough. Susan Del Percio.
I gave her a D, and it's good to try new things, but when you're taking a day longer to fix a pothole, that's not taking care of businesses, which is what you have to do first. I also gave her a D because what she did with Ray Kelly. You don't throw a police commissioner under a bus in the administration, especially in this administration. And the only reason she didn't get an F was because she still had a job.
Oh boy. Okay. Harsh assessment. Scott Levenson.
I'm going to be an outlier here. I gave her a B+, and I gave her a B+, well, one, because I remember, I guess it's 20 years ago when a tough mayor by the name of Ed Koch tried to install bike lanes and tore them back up in 3 weeks. I'm a driver. I drive all the time. I have as much road rage today as I did 5 years ago, maybe a little less, and certainly that's not to maturity, but I think of the synchronization of the lights on First Avenue. I think New Yorkers are hard to change culture, it's hard to change habits, and it's going to take a while to get people to use bicycles. It's going to take a while to get the pedestrian malls used, but I think it's going to create a better quality of life in our city.
Okay. Jake, your grade.
I give her an F. I think she's a disaster. I think she should have lost her job after the snowstorm. And Scott's talking about changing cultures. I don't entirely blame the commissioner. I blame the mayor, who is trying to change culture. He spends a lot of time in European cities, and he loves bike lanes, and he loves open street cafes. But the fact of the matter is, this is a sort of back-ended way for him to get what he wants. He couldn't get congestion pricing, so he's going to shut the traffic down to people come to a standstill and go to their elected officials and say you got to pass congestion pricing.
Well,
so I think
it's
right
about that. But it also happens to be killing businesses. I mean, you look at the businesses along the avenues, it's really hurting them.
I think too often we hear, not New York, this can't be done, and for too long we accepted the unacceptable in New York. For years you couldn't stop people washing your windows when you came off bridges with a piece of newspaper.
But that's something that's supposed to be
and the fact,
the case.
And I think something that's supposed to be is to make attempts to cut down on congestion in the city. I don't think this has increased congestion in our city.
I'm not sure how you...
for it, but not through bike lanes. Bike lanes, they really don't cut down on congestion. Right. There's very little usage of it. They're not good for like 4 months
That's
out of
a
the year.
generational thing. I think just like people are still buying books, and Barnes and Noble still has tons of real estate here.
Can't even move the
I think
snow.
Listen, it's a generational thing. People don't always ride bikes, but 20-year-olds do.
Okay, and when maybe more than 3% of the population starts to use them, we should consider it. But it's not fair.
It's an extremely arrogant policy that penalizes, and I hate to use this outer borough, it is a very Manhattan-centrist policy. And there are major arteries in this city where they have permanent parking on one side and bikes on the other, and they're pinching 4 lanes into 2, and it hurts the people, working class people that have to drive into Manhattan.
It's why I'm glad there's no tolls on the Williamsburg and Brooklyn Bridge. I'm with you on that.
This is not why we elected this guy to a 3rd term, so that he could create bike lanes and
don't
open
go there.
cafes.
Let's not talk about how he got to the 3rd term. That's a whole other subject altogether.
Well, let's talk about the next mayor. There are a bunch of candidates, at least half a dozen, who think that they could or should be the next mayor, and they're running for, in most cases, unspecified citywide offices. We looked at some of their financial filings just recently. This is a whole different universe from a guy who can spend $100 million of his own money. But what do you make? How does it look? Anybody in?
Well, with
definitely
city
out?
financing, I mean, really with 6-to-1 financing matches, everyone can be a player on especially on the Democratic side when it comes to that. So I think most people who are going to be deemed serious Democratic candidates are going to be able to hit their numbers.
I think Susan's absolutely right on that, and everybody's going to hit the cap, and that's what's not being told in the story. This is a total perception game. That's all it is right now. And in the last filing, everybody did what they had to do. Billy Thompson had to file with $250 just to be alive. He did that. Bill de Blasio had to raise over $500,000. He blew that out of the water. Scott Stringer, Christine Quinn raised what they needed to raise. Everybody's going to cap in this race. The perception game is almost over.
Plus, you also have the spending cap, so to have an operation too early and to spend too early really works against you.
Yeah, it's way too early to know if there's a front runner. Anthony Weiner was the front runner 6 weeks ago. He's not in the race anymore, so I think it's a long time. We'll see how it works, but you know, with public financing, it's a totally different situation.
I'm not quite sure, Errol, that any of these candidates are actually going to be the nominee. I think after the last couple of terms of Giuliani and Bloomberg, although I disagree a lot, I think the city has come to expect a certain level of management and the right resume. And I think we've seen the end of the clubhouse political person getting this nomination. And I think probably the person that wins the nomination for the Democratic, I love that I'm talking about your primary, it probably has not emerged yet. Neither has the candidate on the Republican side.
Also to describe any of these guys as the clubhouse politician. Who's the clubhouse politician?
Who's not?
None of them.
I mean, who's not? They all come out of the. They all come out of the public.
They're all professional politicians. They've all been.
Do me a favor. Clubhouse died 20 years ago. There is no clubhouse.
All right, then
that's
they're all
a generation
politicians
ago.
who really have done nothing else in their careers but be politicians. So
do me
maybe
a favor,
not
please
clubhouse.
Well, that's certainly true with Anthony Weiner, the one candidate we lost.
Does anybody at the table want to give us a name that we haven't heard, who you think might get into this race?
Don't have one.
So that's why we keep going back to the same six.
There you go.
Let's talk about the race for the 9th Congressional District that Anthony Weiner used to inhabit. We've got a Democratic candidate, David Weprin, who's making some noise today, saying that he doesn't like what the head of the party, President Obama, is doing in the Middle East. He's making some points there, or trying to. We've got Bob Turner, who was on our program just recently, and he's sort of ready for a second run. How do you see this shaping up?
It's good. Turner's going to give a very competitive race, but it's very difficult in that district. I mean, the registration numbers, it will take a little bit of a miracle for him to pull it off, but it doesn't mean you write it off. And Weprin coming out of party clubhouse politics is not something that is going to play well over there.
It's Queens County. It's the one place where the clubhouse still
I think there's a bit of a
That being said, you got to give it to Ed Koch, who continues to, at 87, to find ways to be relevant. This is a district where the conservative Jewish vote matters, and his comments this week on David Weprin, I think, only helped to make this race even more competitive.
I think it matters, and I also don't feel comfortable with where President Obama is on the issues of Israel and the Middle East, but I don't think that it's a make or break issue for either candidate. And I think, David Weprin is the likely winner. With or without, what he says about.
Although it's a good fundraising, I have to say, for Turner, who's not known, it could be a good fundraising issue. It could give him a little national play. And then he'll have to go back to, why elect me?
Is this strictly a national race, Jake?
Well, I think the national parties are going to look at this race. My guess is they're probably not going to get into it. On the Republican side, I think they feel that the race is gone, that they had a stronger candidate in Councilman Ulrich, who took a pass on the race. Bob Turner's a great guy, and he's assembling a very competent team around him, but as Susan said, it's a very tough district. And on the Democratic side, I think the Democrats say, look, we can win this thing without wasting a lot of resources, and at the end of the day, the district's probably going to be gone in a year. I think the interesting point about this is that we're actually discussing a special congressional election race in New York City. So I think we could have an interesting race, and if the political team around Turner is able to cut some deals in the Hasidic community and get some cross endorsements, it could be an interesting race.
And to Jake's other point, I think that's one of the interesting things that come out of this. It does make it the most likely district to be cut out.
Well, we've been talking about that endlessly, but it remains to be seen what the rules are going to be.
I just slightly disagree, only because of population and the way things are going to work out as far as it being. As much as certain congressmen want it to be split up and that would work to their advantage, it doesn't necessarily make sense that it will.
Nothing about redistricting is going to be simple this time around. Thank you all so much for your insights. We look forward to speaking with you again real soon. We're going to take a little break. I'll be back in a minute with some viewer mail and a preview of tomorrow night's program. Stay with us.